welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson. I'm your host, Jeremy Versillo, bringing you a solo show tonight. It's the March Madness that is fantasy hockey playoffs. That's definitely the only type of March Madness going on right now, right? I should trademark that. Jokes aside, we're more than halfway through the fantasy quarterfinals, so I hope you're winning your matchup, or even better, have a bye and are prepping for the semis. Let's get right to the news, though. Some big injury news. Kirill Kaprizov is day-to-day with a lower body injury. This is in addition to Joel Eriksson Ek's injury that was announced on Tuesday. I forget if that made it into Lewis's show. It certainly leaves the lines thin in Minnesota, and it's not good for fantasy managers of any Minnesota Wild player. The team will definitely be scoring less if Kaprizov misses any time. They lost 2-1 to Chicago today, and the lines they rolled were Boldy, Yurov, and Bobby Brink, who just made it back from injury, followed by Tarasenko, Hartman, and Zuccarello. The first power play unit was Boldy, Hartman, Tarasenko, and Zuccarello. Maybe there's some streamer value in there. I know Tarasenko has been fantastic when he's gotten power play one time this year, but I'm going to mention this now, and I'm going to mention it a bunch more times this episode. Next week's schedule sucks. There isn't a ton of value to mine on the wire because 30 teams play Tuesday, 26 teams play Thursday, and 30 teams play Saturday. So your teams to stream from are almost non-existent. Get those off-night teams like the Rangers and Buffalo. I will say that again, the Rangers and Buffalo, they will be worth their weight in gold next week if you have time to plan ahead. So also benefit the top-heavy teams with lots of streamer slots to play around, as opposed to balanced teams that will have difficult lineup decisions to make, and it'll hurt managers who run just 3D or one goalie. But I digress. This is not Matchup Maximizer. I should get back to the injury news. The other injury that was announced today was Juuse Saros. He's also day-to-day, but Justus Annunen got the start against Seattle, and Matt Murray the Younger got called up to back up. It's unsure how long Saros will be out, but keep your eye on his status and maybe add Justus Annunen if you need the goalie starts. He pitched a good one against the lowly Kraken today with a 3-1 victory. I've also received some breaking news as I'm recording this at 11:30 Eastern tonight, don't ask. Tyler Toffoli will not return tonight for San Jose. William Eklund has replaced Toffoli on Power Play 1. That could give some additional value to Eklund going forward, but we'll know more about Toffoli's injury and the situation with the lines in the coming days. Keep in mind that Igor Chernyshov will likely be back from what looks like a pretty nasty concussion soon, so that could play even more difficulty on the power play lines. On the brighter side, we saw two studs return today in Sidney Crosby and Adrian Kempe. Crosby especially seems to have beaten the timeline that was given coming out of the Olympics, so it's a pleasant surprise for Penguins fans and fantasy managers. He of course jumped right back up between Raquel and Rust and onto the top power play unit. Kempe's lines for the 10 p.m. start had him playing with Panarin and Kopitar. I don't think they have a point yet, but I haven't actually checked recently. This makes Kopitar an interesting value prop for the next few weeks if you have the room in your lineup, like I mentioned before. He's older and has slowed down, but now he's playing with two very good players. Maybe he'll turn back the clock and start putting up more points. Another player who should be on your cut radar if you haven't already is Mason McTavish. He got healthy scratched again today, making it 2 games in a row after going pointless in 5. He also saw his ice time dip down to the 12-minute range. It really seems like he's in the doghouse with Coach Quenneville. It's really disappointing for a 23-year-old third overall pick who had been showing consistent growth the past few seasons. You have to wonder if he's poised for a change in scenery this offseason like Zegras or Kakko. The Ducks have a ton of young talent and potentially could be moving on from some guys that don't fit their current system. Another lineup note, the Tampa Bay Lightning seem to have shuffled their top 6 a bit. Anthony Cirelli is now centering Kucherov and Hagel, and he picked up 3 points last game, and I believe 2 more already today from that spot. That leaves the second line as Point, Gensel, and Gonsalves, who have also been doing okay for themselves. Caveat about next week's schedule notwithstanding, I'd be very interested in a first-line Cirelli and rushing out to grab him if there's any way I can fit him into my lineup Saturday, Sunday, and then the games next week. One last one before the break, just a shout-out to Adam Fantilli. He scored 2 goals on 9 shots today and has been absolutely on fire since the Olympics. He's definitely a name to keep an eye on next year's draft because I see him as someone with 100-plus point potential in his prime. The big breakout could be nearing. With that, let's take a quick ad break, and I'll come back to some hot streaks and cold streaks.
DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, is built for the fastest game on ice. With player, props, and live betting, every shift, every shot, every save gives you options to get in on the game with DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm taking a look at the odds right now. As of March 15th, I like looking at the awards odds. The Vezina is the most interesting to me right now. Vasilevsky is currently the favorite. He's coming off a weak game against Carolina yesterday. I feel like the field is still kind of wide open. I wonder if someone could still win it. Sorokin is next in the list. If you have an idea of who you think is going to win the Vezina, take a look at DraftKings Sportsbook. By the way, new customers bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 plus in most states. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright 2026. NHL all rights reserved.
Welcome back, everyone. Before I get into the hot streaks and cold streaks, I want to point out one more piece of news that Derek so lovely pointed out in our short shifts chat. It looks like Artemi Panarin is getting double power play duty in Los Angeles, the Ovechkin treatment. So, not that you're going to add Artemi Panarin, but that means there's one less power play spot for the other guys in Los Angeles and maybe a bit more points to go around for some of those guys on the second power play if they're playing with Panarin now. But into the hot streaks and cold streaks. This is the silly time of year where season-long holds don't matter, and maybe you'll make some bold moves based on a hot streak or some deployment. You can't afford to lose 2 weeks waiting for the big Stamkos or point turnarounds from earlier in the year, because guess what? There's only 2.5 weeks left in the season for you. You need points, and you need them now. Anyone with a bad schedule, a loss of deployment, or a cold streak is potential drop fodder. That includes teams like New Jersey and Florida who don't play Saturday-Sunday this week. If you need 2 more games and have to drop a, Sam Bennett or Carter Verhaeghe, one of the fringier owns on the Florida Panthers or New Jersey Devils, I say do it. If you lose, you're not going to play next week anyway, and so it doesn't matter if those players are in your lineup. I already mentioned Mason McTavish as a drop fodder. Another cold duck is Beckett Sennecke. He has no points in his last 7 games, but he does have 23 shots over that span, more than 3 per game. He's also on the second line with Granlund, who's also cold, and Killorn, who's been cold the whole season. And he's on the second power play unit. The Ducks are rough next week, as are most teams, but finals week they have a great Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday schedule. If you're comfortable with your team, as much as Sennecke's cold, I think the shots are enough to keep me rolling him out there. At least it's not a full cardio session if he's getting you 1.5 to 2.5 points in peripherals every single game. On the other hand, Troy Terry is a Duck showing signs of life. He's got 4 points in his 2 games back from injury with 9 shots over that span too. And unlike Sennecke, he's on line 1 and power play 1, which is even better. If you want to make that swap, I'd absolutely do it. People might be sleeping on Terry because he was cold and then injured, so definitely check your waiver wire. I wouldn't be surprised if he's out there in some of your leagues. Someone you may be snoozing on is Elias Lindholm. He has 0 points in his last 7 games and finds himself on the third line while Fraser Minton takes all of his points in the top 6. Lindholm is someone who may be widely owned and I'd consider dropping. He does play 2 off nights next week, but they're Wednesday and Sunday, so you may be able to drop him for the weekend or for Monday, Tuesday, and then pick him back up Wednesday for some help. On the flip side, schedule-wise, Gabe Perreault is a scorching hot rookie who has a great schedule next week. Ryan already gave you some of the details on Gabe Perreault's pedigree and upside, and he's delivering. He's got 9 points in his last 7 games and has continued to produce even after losing power play 1 time to JT Miller upon return. Perreault also has the best schedule next week, with the Rangers being the only team that plays Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. He's a must-add on that alone because in my competitive leagues, every single Ranger will be owned next week. I can guarantee it. Every guy who is in their lineup night in and night out will be on someone's fantasy roster next week. So if you can get Gabe Perreault a couple days early and get his Sunday game and the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday next week, do it. His games are a bit of empty calories if he doesn't score any points, but I'm hoping for, 65, 70 point pace rest of the season from Gabe Perreault. If he gets you 3 assists, four assists in the 4 games next week, that's a great stream given the lack of options. I am also pleased to report that the short shifts bump is back in action. I had a note here lined up about a cold Anton Lundell with 0 points in his last 5 games, but before I started recording, he potted a power play goal. Hopefully this is a sign of things to come, as Lundell plays 4 times each in the semifinals and the finals weeks. But he is someone I would be willing to drop given his fringy ownership and the fact that Florida doesn't play Saturday or Sunday this week. If you're desperate and you need a back-to-back streamer and you just need those games this week, you can go ahead and drop Lundell, even though I'd be looking to pick him back up starting next week. A few blazing hot guys who are very lowly owned now. Marco Rossi has been hot his last 3 games with a total of 7 points in 3 games. Brock Besser, playing alongside Rossi, has added 6 points in those 3 games, and they both have 1 more point tonight, even though the team's only scored 1 goal. The new-look Canucks may be gaining some chemistry, or maybe they just beat up on Florida, Seattle, and Nashville their last 3 games. Either way, keep Rossi and Besser in mind as deeper streamer options going forward. Another deeper streamer who's been dominating for my team this week is Connor Brown in New Jersey. Who would have thought that Connor Brown would be outscoring Connor McDavid in the quarterfinals? He's got 6 points in his last 3 games and 12 in his last 10. His deployment is top line and top power play with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. He's definitely a guy you should be looking to add and hold on to as long as he's got this great deployment. Last but not least, to parallel Erik Karlsson's hot streak from last episode with Lewis, Chris Letang is ice cold. He's got no points in his last 9 games, despite the Penguins scoring 6 on Wednesday and 7 on Monday. Ouch. I don't think there's much reason to hold him, but the Pens do play 5 times in finals week, and you'll need 4 defensemen next week. So maybe if there aren't better defense options on the wire, you're kind of just stuck rolling Letang. I've got a bit more time tonight, so let's go through some of the changing goalie tides. It feels like situations have changed very rapidly recently, and I think it's because teams are trying to get every win they can to get into the playoffs. There's actually a surprising amount of value on the waiver wire right now. As I mentioned, you'll definitely want to be getting your goalie starts next week, as it'll be difficult to fit in extra forwards because of the schedule. Connor Ingram has started 4 in a row for Edmonton, although he got shelled for 3 goals against by Florida in the first period tonight, and it looks like that game is over with 4 goals allowed on 23 shots. So Jerry's probably going to get the next start, but I still think Ingram will get 2 starts each of the next 3 weeks, and Edmonton should win games even if the ratios are less than pristine. Jerry, on the other hand, should not be on your fantasy roster at this point. He's barely starting, and when he does, he's bad. He's still owned in 20% of Cupful leagues, which shocks me. I'm hoping that's just teams that are no longer in the playoff or consolation bracket, but that may be a bit too much to hope for. Same thing goes for Elvis Merzlikins. Jet Greaves seems to be getting the lion's share of starts and has been performing quite well with them. Ironically, someone who's not getting the lion's share of starts is Alex Lyon in Buffalo. He's alternating with Ukko-Pekka, and both are performing very well when they get the starts, so they're worth, streaming in, but it's really hard to hold a goalie who only starts every other game. What makes them interesting right now, though, is the off-night schedule next week. Buffalo plays Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and if the pattern holds, it means Luukkonen gets Wednesday and Saturday, and Lyon gets Friday. That's a long time to hold guys without getting a start for them, but the off-night goalie could pay dividends in a league like Cupful with only 4 moves per week. Another guy who's started to get the majority of starts is Jakub Dobeš in Montreal. He's been starting more than Jacob Fowler. He took a loss to Detroit tonight, but only gave up 2 goals and could be worth a look if he's on your wire. Adin Hill has also been seeing the majority of starts in Vegas, but like Ingram, got lit up to start the game today. That game's still going on. I think he's down 3-0, and all 3 of those goals were in the first period. I suspect Schmid will see a start this weekend, but that means Hill will get at least 2 starts next week. It's worth a look if you're a 0 or 1 goalie manager going into the very crowded week next week. Another guy, if you have an opening on Tuesday next week, is Joel Hofer. If the pattern holds, he's in line to start Tuesday, Saturday, and has been performing very well every other start that he's been alternating with Binnington. I would be happy to have him on my team and pretty comfortable predicting when he's going to start based on the alternating pattern. Last but not least for goalies, I will steer you away from Alex Nedeljkovic. He's been starting a lot lately for the Sharks with mediocre to good results, but it sounds like Askarov is close to a return from injury, and that'll go back to a 50-50 or worse for Nedeljkovic. Just don't worry about that. If you can get him for 1 game, great, but be very careful of Askarov returning. That's all I've got time for tonight. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed the show, please consider joining the Keeping Karlsson Patreon group at www.keepingkarlsson.com/patron. Super supporters receive ad-free episodes, and you can join our Discord server to interact with Brian, Elon, myself, the rest of the Short Shifts crew, and hundreds of other talented fantasy managers. Check out www.gamedaytweets.com to get all the best info from Twitter without having to slog through the rest of that place. It includes team-by-team and searchable tweets by player name and starting goalie confirmations. Visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes with at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, and Natural Stat Trick. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. Until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.